Today we chat to Chloe from Lionel The Label. She's an accidental entrepreneur with a passion for Australian businesses. She shares more about her organic journey from sewer lover to entrepreneur, as well as why keeping manufacturing in Australia is so important to her. Thanks for listening and enjoy the pod. So tell us a bit about Chloe and Lionel The Label.
Well, I'm Chloe. I'm 22 years of age and I live on the beautiful Sunshine Coast. I actually couldn't tell you how long I've had Lionel The Label for. It's sort of just naturally evolved from a hobby, and then I went on to study at TAFE. I actually never finished my qualification apart from my Cert 3 while I was still in high school, but I never finished my advanced diploma. But we won't tell anyone that. No,
keep that a secret.
I've just always sort of enjoyed learning at my own pace, I suppose. And I've always known exactly what it was that I wanted to get out of my course, because I got that initial taster when I did the Certificate 3 while I was still at high school. So I knew exactly what I was walking into, and that's why I got a little bit bored and sidetracked. But yeah, it was a wonderful experience and I learned a lot, but I certainly sponged information before it should have been given to me.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. And towards the label itself now, can you share a bit more about that? Just give us sort of a quick summary on what the label is, what it's all about.
Yeah, sure. So I manufacture in Australia here, actually mostly myself still at this stage, swimwear, and I do a festival collection as well. Obviously that one's on pause at the moment with everything that's going on, COVID and everything. But yeah, normally I travel around to music festivals and trade at those. So all your big ones like Splendour in the Grass and Falls Festival. I do a couple of pop-up one-day events. Groove in the Moo. What's some other ones? They seem like forever ago now.
You keep yourself nice and busy.
Yeah, I sure do. And I'll travel as far as Melbourne for a music festival. So that certainly keeps me busy. So it's been a little bit different this year, being a bit more grounded. But it's been good. Yeah,
I guess it gives you, with this pause, it gives you a bit more time to sort of rethink, whether it be sort of yourself personally or the business itself. It just gives you a lot more time to do things that you always didn't have time to do, and maybe allows a lot of people to reset. So it sounds like you've probably gained a few benefits from that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I feel so refreshed after this year. And as much as I miss traveling around to the festivals and stuff, my partner and I, we've just purchased and moved into our first home together and things like that. So we've had other things to concentrate on. And living on the Sunshine Coast too, the restrictions here have not been heavy whatsoever. So I really cannot complain. But I certainly sympathise for the other states that are in lockdown. Trying to think positive.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on from COVID, because we might dive down into a rabbit hole there. It's probably going to get a bit too sidetracked. Just going back to you, when we first spoke about the podcast, you mentioned the term accidental entrepreneur, which is sort of how you described yourself there. And can you just share what you meant by that? Because I found that to be quite humbling. And tell us about your journey of being an accidental entrepreneur.
Yeah, of course. So I actually never intended on starting a business. It's just all been quite organic. So I started sewing when I was at school. I had to pick my elective subjects, and I've always been creative. I've always been doing something creative, whatever. And this is just one of those hobbies that I never got sick of. So I picked it as a subject. I'd never sewn before. My mum can't sew. My grandma's actually a really good seamstress. She used to take me around to costume stores. She used to be involved heavily in theatre and that kind of thing. So she used to create a lot of garments for those. She often took me to places like that, and then actual performances, things like that. So I suppose that could have sparked a bit of interest. But at the time, I didn't really think much of it when I picked this as an elective subject. And before the school year started, when I was on the Christmas break, I got Mum's sewing machine out of the cupboard, which she got for her 21st birthday and had literally never used it. She doesn't know how to sew. And I just started teaching myself how to make things, and I was making hair scrunchies, and yeah, I was just making all sorts, just having a bit of a play around. And literally from there, it's just a hobby that I never got sick of. I never ever got sick of it.
Yeah.
And then I went on and studied at TAFE, did the Cert 3 while I was in year 11 and 12 at school. And then went on to do my advanced diploma the year I finished school, but I didn't complete that. But by that point, when I was at school, the hair scrunchies and all the things that I'd started making, my friends would be like, "Oh, that's really cool. Can you make me one and I'll buy it off you?" But yeah, okay, can do. Like, I was just sort of hoarding this pile of stuff that I'd made at home and didn't have the time to wear it all. And yeah, it just sort of started like that. I remember when I was at school, I had a friend and she created a Facebook page for me, and she really enjoyed photography and stuff. So she started taking photos of all my products, and yeah, long story short, here I am. Obviously I've set everything up probably now, have a website.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, no, that's how it all started. I never intended on starting a business. It was never something that had even crossed my mind. It was just something that organically evolved.
Yeah, no, that's really cool because it's quite interesting hearing your story compared to a lot of other people, and not just sort of in fashion, in the broader realm of business. They very much talk about a deliberate business strategy. You know, I found a gap in X market. I'm going to create Y product.
Yeah.
Here's my sort of route to market. Here's my sort of unique value proposition. But it's quite humbling to hear yours. Not that it was unprofessional. I don't mean that in any way, but because like you mentioned, accidental. It's really cool to hear that, and yeah, you're serving a genuine need. You weren't trying to manufacture demand for it. You had that demand, and you just organically built it, which is fantastic. And now you've got a successful professional label today, which is great. In terms of like the brand itself now, what influenced you to make it more sustainable? You see a lot of swimwear and festival wear products where, you know, sustainability and the materials they use is probably zero
Yeah.
consideration. But I know that's not the case with you. Can you just share the influence behind that
Yeah,
for you?
absolutely. So I'll be the first person to put my hand up and say that I'm not perfect, and my brand is still not perfect in terms of sustainability and that kind of thing. It's certainly something that I'm
Yeah,
working towards. TAFE really shed a lot of light on the way things are manufactured. When I first
yeah,
started sewing myself, I have no idea why, but I just assumed that like a robot or a machine was manufacturing clothing. I did not even put two
yeah,
and two together that a human would be sitting there operating that machine in the worst possible
yeah,
conditions. I had no idea. I think that's the same for a lot of people. A lot of people are uneducated about the way clothes are actually manufactured. And I've listened to other episodes here on your podcast, and I've heard a lot of people talk about the true cost. That is
yeah,
something that we watched multiple times in a year throughout my TAFE course. And there was just something about it. I just felt so uncomfortable. Like I didn't even want to watch it because I felt so uncomfortable watching that. And I sort of went, oh, like I wonder where this is made. Then still to that day, until I watched that video, I had no idea that humans were
yeah,
there slaving away to manufacture these products. I had no
yeah,
idea. I was so naive about it. And then also one of my TAFE teachers at the time, she'd gone over to Fiji and worked for, I think it was roughly about 6 months. And she helped set
yeah,
up a factory over there, and to teach the Fijians how to manufacture, health and safety procedures, all those kinds of things to try and make it a better working environment for them. And just hearing her stories, it
okay,
was just so eye-opening. Like she said at the beginning of the day, they'd all get one little square of toilet paper, and that was their allowance for the day, and things like I was just, it was
uh, yeah,
it
it's
was
quite
very
confronting, isn't
confronting
it?
listening to her stories. I was like, wow, we are so privileged living here in Australia, and we're so privileged with the fact that we do actually have access to this education to do better. Um,
Yeah,
but I still to like so many people were just so unaware about it. Um, yeah, and even myself, like I'll put my hand
Yeah.
up and be the first to say I'm not perfect. I know that I can do better. And
Yeah.
every day I'm trying to make a commitment to do something better. Not
Yeah.
just in terms of the
Yeah.
fashion industry, but yeah, all aspects of my life trying to be a little bit more sustainable.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and that's all we can ask for at the end of the day. Because I think there is um, sometimes it's sort of unfair pressure put on consumers to be perfect, or to be as close to perfect as possible. But I'm a big believer, and one of the quotes I like to sort of preach at Stride is small changes times millions of people equals
Yes,
global
I love
impact.
that one.
Um, yeah, so it can really yeah, just making these small changes make a big deal. And if we put the barrier of entry to start being, let's just say, a sustainable shop, if we say it has to be, fair trade certified, organic, grown in Australia, stuff like that. Like you're just making the barrier so high that people can get intimidated, just don't know where to start or who to shop with. Whereas if we're just telling people, if you can make a conscious effort to only shop, let's just say, got certified organic cotton, just as a random example, that's just a great start as opposed to going
Yeah.
polyester. So making those small changes is amazing. And I commend you on your honesty throughout that, which is really cool. And from a business point of view now, what challenges have you faced in sourcing sustainable materials and resources?
Well, as a small brand, minimum order quantities come into it quite a bit. Um,
Okay.
Sort of the pace, like the innovation of the products that are being released, actually learning that they're available to purchase, and that some of these products you don't even realize that they exist. So
Yep.
that's been another one. So then it's just making the switch. Like I started seeing the compostable mail satchels advertised, for example. I had no idea that they existed. Prior to that, I was
Okay.
using sort of the tough bag mailers that you got from Australia Post, the hard paper ones,
Yeah.
over the plastic. So,
Yep.
I mean, that was still better than the plastic mailers, of course. But yeah,
Yep.
it's just even knowing what products are out there. You've really got to do your research, and it can be really time consuming trying to find an alternative to something that you're using.
Mm.
So yeah, the minimum order quantities
Yeah.
would definitely be probably the most challenging as a small business. And then the price
Mm.
difference as well,
Yeah.
can come into play sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And there's some really um important challenges there, because I dare say a lot of the more fast fashion labels, their sort of main box of tick is which
Yeah.
is the cheapest. Um, and you're not doing that, which is, yeah, really commendable there. And would you say there's maybe some, I don't know, are there any silver linings in that regard? So you talk about, yeah, there's some challenges in these sustainable resources, and finding maybe with these factories. Do you maybe feel as though these factories who are more consciously minded are easier to deal with, or are there any other sort of silver linings in that regard?
Yes and no. I feel like, for example, when you're dealing with directly to China, they're such huge businesses, and they obviously have so many staff. So the response and everything
Yep.
like that, they're just so efficient.
Okay.
So I couldn't complain on that end. And then when you turn to Australian
Yep.
suppliers, you might not get a response for a week. You really need to allow more time in your production phase to
Yep.
allow for those kinds of things and for all the sourcing. And it's just not as quick. They don't have
Yep.
someone working 24 hours a day, obviously. And I'm quite sure that must be what
Yeah.
happens in China, because I have sourced materials and resources from there in the past. Um, and
Yep.
yeah, the response is almost instant. It's wild to even think
Yeah.
about, but yeah, so, yeah,
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, and it goes both ways there. And sort of now bringing it back to sort of your journey as an accidental entrepreneur. I quite like that phrase. So I'm going to probably keep using it as much
that's
as
right.
possible. What's one piece of advice you would love to give to your past self? And something that, any future brand owners, maybe current brand owners listening to this episode, can take with them. So like maybe one or maybe two pieces
Yeah,
of advice, whatever
sure.
it may be.
Um, my key bit of advice to myself would be, when I've set a goal, and I've made a commitment
Yep.
towards reaching that goal, it's okay to accept the fact that that goal is not the right thing to do, as long as that's not the easy way out. I know myself, I put a
Okay.
lot of pressure on myself when I set a goal. I really, really want to achieve it, no matter. And deep down, sometimes I know it's just not the right thing to do anymore. And it's not the fact that I'm taking the easy way out, but that's always sort of what I've convinced myself, that I'm just being a cop out by not achieving that specific goal. So I'm really trying to shift that mindset. And then I know a lot of people say, but you've just got to start. I can't even imagine where my brand would be if I had have sat down and gone, oh, I really like sewing as a hobby, really good at manufacturing. And if I had have got into all the logistics, and I would have just dug myself a deep hole, and I probably would have never started. So just start, and then commit to always doing better and to continue learning. That would be my key piece of advice.
Oh, I think that's fantastic, and I really love about that advice is very evergreen. You know, and it relates to a lot of different industries and brands as well. You're not really super niche to what you're doing. I think a lot of people can apply that advice to their careers and maybe their labels also. That's fantastic, Chloe. Thank you so much for sharing that. And the last question I'd like to ask before we wrap up is, what do you think is important to continue manufacturing in Australia as the brand continues to grow?
So I've always been really suspicious, even factories and certifications and everything like that claim that the factories are producing ethically made clothing. When I was at TAFE, we were sort of educated around the factories. They'd have like the front end factory and the back end factory, and you'd see, you know, this whole perfect looking setup going on in the front, but somewhere else there'd be a slave factory happening in the background. And that's always stuck with me. And I've always sort of been like, if I can manufacture in Australia, I will. And it just breaks my heart over the years to have seen things been taken offshore, or hear of it, or hear of companies that my grandparents worked at that ended up getting taken over to China. And it just breaks my heart, really. I actually used to live in a small country town in New South Wales. So when you've seen things like that happen, there was so many people left jobless. And jobs that people had begun from the second they left school, and all of a sudden that's the only thing that they'd done their whole lives, and they were just jobless. Feel like it really knocked their confidence about and things like that. So I've seen things like that happen too. But yes, I just have always, it was one of the first things that I decided when I really started to stop and think, oh, hang on, I have a business here, and what am I going to do if it gets to the point where I can't manufacture all these products by myself? And it was always, no, I have to keep it in Australia. It just didn't feel right looking to alternatives overseas to have them manufactured. And the quality as well, I think it's so much easier to quality control something that's in Australia. And I really do think even just by looking at a product, you can tell if it's been made in Australia or in a sustainable, ethically way, opposed to the shortcuts that's taken in all the sweatshops overseas. So, and also for the Australian economy, and there's just so many benefits to keeping it Australian made. And I've always sort of had this theory that everyone will eventually get sick of sort of buying things overseas. You know, it's sort of like once bitten, twice shy. I feel like I've seen so many of my friends order things online, just cheap, nasty clothing. They get it. It's not what they wanted in the first place. They've been let down. So I've always kind of gone, oh, hopefully people get shy of those behaviors and start actually supporting the high quality, small, sustainable brands who are trying to do the right thing and who are trying to improve and who employ the family and friends of their loved ones or their neighbor, or, you know, it's just something that I've always felt really strongly about.
Yeah, no, you can definitely hear the passion in your voice, which is really infectious. Just about how much of a proud Australian you are, and how proud you are of your roots, and really humbling hearing the story, of potentially your grandparents and sort of in that small country town, New South Wales, and well, like you mentioned, there are probably some things maybe don't realise people who live in the cities. If a factory does leave a small country town, like you mentioned there, 50 people might lose their job, and that may affect 200 households or
Absolutely.
whatever it may be. So no, that's a really good insight there that I probably haven't really considered in the past. So
That's okay, no
yeah, thank you
worries.
so much for sharing that. Um, and look, that kind of brings our episode to an end today, Chloe. It was really fantastic. Um, Learning so many things today about yourself as the accidental entrepreneur, sort of your journey there, and just to finish with your thoughts on Australian manufacturing, the Australian economy. There was really humbling and insightful.
No,
So a
thank you
big,
so
big
much,
thank you
and
for your
thank you for
time.
inviting me to talk on your podcast. It's been great, and I've really enjoyed listening to all the other episodes. Like I said to you, I had to binge listen to them all because I was just learning so much. It was addictive.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. It really does mean the world. If you like what you heard, please leave a nice review. And if you have any feedback or want to recommend a guest, and yes, that can include you love yourself, please email me at jordan@stridestore.com.au.